Digby, thank you for joining us this evening. Like Digby said, I am Daniel Keever. I wanted just to give you just a couple minutes of background on who I am and some of the things that are going on in the school division, and then love to engage in some questions. Uh, so I am the product of public education. That's me on the right as a either ninth or 10th grade student in high school. And that hair was standing straight up because I was so excited about the picture opportunity. It's fallen down a little bit since. I loved my public education experience. I loved being a student at Bayside High School in Virginia Beach. If you're familiar with Saved by the Bell, it's not that Bayside. It's the real Bayside High School. And I was a graduate in 1990 of Bayside. Went to Chapel Hill, North Carolina for 4 years of college, political science and history, and then came back to Virginia Beach in 1994 and started working at Ocean Lakes High School as a security guard while I took education classes at Norfolk State University to get certified to teach. I am a son, and I've got a brother that lives in North Carolina. I'm married to Amber Keever, and I've got two children. A daughter that's in ninth grade, a student at First Colonial High School in Virginia Beach. She's in the Legal Studies Academy there. And then my son is 21, and he works at an elementary school in Virginia Beach. One of the challenges with the superintendency is that you are and should become a resident of where you are serving. So I live in Williamsburg, James City County, Sunday through Friday, and then get to spend time with family on the weekends. And then the two dogs on the far side of the picture oftentimes keep me company here in Williamsburg, Molly and Maisie, and I think they're adorable. So I include them. My career in education really started in Virginia Beach, so you can see Poseidon on the right-hand side. I spent lots of time in Virginia Beach doing lots of different things. I was a security guard, as Digby mentioned. I was a teacher, taught social studies, history, government, leadership skills, and then spent some time in administration, whether it be in the central support administrative realm or as a middle school principal, high school principal. My last 5 years in Virginia Beach, I served as the senior executive director for high schools, meaning that I supervised the high school principals there. There are 11 comprehensive high schools and 5 specialty centers, so about 20,000 students I had responsibility for in Virginia Beach before I came to Williamsburg, James City County as Chief Operating Officer. There was an opportunity here for me to learn and grow, and by that I mean most of the work that I had done was devoted to school leadership and supporting school principals and teachers. The opening here for the Chief Operating Officer allowed me to work in some central support opportunities, for instance, human resources and technology and operations, buses and child nutrition services and those kinds of things. The neat thing about that was that I got a chance to learn from different people. As a Virginia Beach raised student who went into education in Virginia Beach, I knew the Virginia Beach way, I knew about Virginia Beach, but I didn't know how things worked in other parts of the state or in other educational realms. So it was really a growing opportunity for me in 2020. That growing opportunity turned into Deputy Superintendent. I think that was in 2023. And then when Dr. Heron announced her retirement about a year and a half or 2 years ago, the board asked me to serve as interim superintendent. And subsequently, I was selected to serve as superintendent. Just a couple pieces about Williamsburg, James City County. The school division is a little over 11,000 strong in terms of students. That number has dropped in the last couple years. At one juncture, we're at about 11,500. Last year was at 11,300. That 11,100 students does not include our Bright Beginnings or pre-kindergarten students. Approximately 350 students are in that program. When we talk about our staff and the size of our staff, I talk about 2,000 staff members. Generally, about 1,000 of those folks are on the instructional staff, and then the other 1,000 are support staff, administrative staff. Think about bus drivers and custodians and clerical support. The school division has also become more diverse in the last number of years. We're seeing additional students that are joining us from other parts across the state and other parts across the nation. But our community has become more diverse, and the school division has become more diverse as well. 4 things I want to point out as highlights, just in terms of broad brushstrokes. The first one being that the chronic absenteeism rate for the school division has consistently dropped. Chronic absenteeism is a marker that's used at the state level to determine how often students are coming to school on a daily basis over the course of an entire school year. If you miss 10 or more days, if you miss 10% or more of the days in school, you're considered chronically absent. Our chronic absenteeism number went from about 14% 2 years ago to 9.9% last year. It is important for students to be in school every day. That's what we believe is the pathway to learning. But there are a number of reasons that young people don't come to school on a daily basis. And we spend a considerable amount of time encouraging, cajoling, conferencing, mandating that you come to school every day. So we feel like this is a success because it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to ensure that students are there on a daily basis. I wanted to mention, nearly 3,000 advanced placement tests were taken. We continue to want our students to take advanced placement courses, more rigorous classes, and so we're excited that number continues to go up. I wanted to mention that we outperform the state standards of learning. So 100% of our results in aggregate were better than the state. That's a good number, but that's not a satisfactory number from my perspective. I would like to see our scores continue to get better. I would like us to lead the region when it comes to academic achievement. So while we are happy that we outperform the state, I consider that to be a baseline and not where we aspire to end up. And then finally, I really believe in the growth and need for growth around career and technical education, helping our students understand pathways that are available to them outside of high school. We want those pathways to be discovered in elementary, middle, and worked on in high school. And so the industry credentialing and students getting those credentials has been an important part of our work. We saw an increase in that year over year. In November of 25, I released a transition plan. That transition plan was based on any number of inputs. When I first assumed the role in June, there was a broad-based survey that was conducted of staff, of students, and of families that gave some perspective around what are we doing well within the school division and what needs to continue to get better. I also convened a number of community meetings, individual one-on-one conversations, meetings with all of our school staff over the course of August to build the plan out. And when I released the plan, there were 32 specific action steps that we identified as things that we wanted to get accomplished in the next 16 to 18 months. I share that with you. I've given you a copy tonight. If you are streaming, you can find it on our website. My hope is that our community sees their voice within the transition plan, because that plan was really based on a significant amount of data collection, data gathering, whether that be quantitative or qualitative. And the plan released, I believe, sets us on the right path. Everything's not happening overnight. It's going to take us some time to continue to build out our work, and the plan is devised into 5 different phases of report out opportunities. The first report out just happened in April. I shared with the school board, and we put on our website those things that were accomplished in phase 1 of the plan. Phase 2 of the plan will be shared with the community and board in July, and you can see that there's a general cadence to here are the things that we're working on, here's what we've accomplished, here's what comes next. The plan related to transition is really driven by the school division strategic plan, which is Elevate to 28. There is a primary goal. The absolute key for us is academic achievement, career and college readiness, and educational equity. That serves as the marker. And then there are supporting priorities beneath that or undergirding that, from developing your human relations and human capital to a positive culture, building community and engagement, ensuring a safe and secure environment, and becoming stronger in terms of our organizational efficiency and effectiveness. So those 4 supporting priorities really drive towards that key priority, which is around academic achievement. In phase 1 of the plan, there were a couple of key features that I thought I'd mention for you this evening. One was the development of a profile of a learner. Some school divisions call that portrait of a graduate. There are 5 or 6 key attributes that we want to establish across our school division as things that students get a chance to experience and demonstrate during their career with us, not just in high school, but pre-K through 12. So we have begun the process of identifying what those qualities and characteristics are. There is continued conversation around the expansion of career pathways. As an example, just in early March, we previewed a documentary called Multiple Choice that happened at William & Mary in conjunction with William & Mary. It told the story about a career and technical education opportunity that developed in Winchester, Virginia, and took funding from not only the locality but some donors to create opportunities and pathways for students to really understand what can life be like after I graduate from school. We're very excited about Army JROTC coming to this area. I've been told multiple times that we needed a branch. I agreed with that. Our challenge in conversation as we submitted applications was that most of the military branches suggested that this area is oversaturated when it comes to JROTC programs. We were going to continue to knock on the door, and just around spring break time, we heard from the Army that they were ready to give us a full cost share model. That cost share model allows for the school division to cover half the cost for staff. The Army covers the other half of the staff cost, and then the Army pays for the equipment. So financially, it is the absolute best model for our locality. Incredibly exciting that over 100 students, as of last Friday, had indicated that they wanted to be scheduled in for that across our 3 high schools. We couldn't be more pleased, and really looking forward to that. There is a significant emphasis on student leadership and student voice in their education. I came from a background as a young person of having the opportunity to serve in student council and student council president and work with young people who wanted a voice in education. And I believe strongly in that. And just as an example, this spring, we had a student voices tour where I spent an hour at every school meeting with groups of students, elementary, middle, and high, for the purpose of understanding what we could do better as an organization in terms of education. And one building in particular, Matthew Whaley, we met with the students, we went through our questions and answers, but there were items that we did not get covered. And so students came to me afterwards with a list of additional items that they wanted to spend time talking with me about, from items or food that we serve in the cafeteria to how often do they have recess, the desire for more recess. In fact, in that what I call manifesto or list, there was a listing of House and Senate bills that were currently before the General Assembly that they wanted the school division and me to suggest get approved because it would bring with it more recess time for them. That level of engagement was fascinating to me, and I wasn't quite ready for that, I think, at the elementary level. But it did show to me that our young people want to talk about what's best for them, and how do we then treasure that, listen to that, and understand that perspective. We, about a year and a half ago, as an organization, conducted a compensation study across our staff to understand our pay structures and to look at our pay structures and our compensation markers with our competitors regionally, and found that there was a gap for us in some areas that we needed to continue to address. Last year in the operating budget, which would have been fiscal 26, we were able to make an initial stab at it. We're doing that again in fiscal 27, and it'll take us to fiscal 28 before we finalize being able to take care of those recommendations. And then the last piece is advisory and planning councils there in phase 1, and that's the idea that I really feel like the community needs to have more of a voice in our school processes, whether that's large group division-wide advisory councils or at each building a series of councils. For instance, I think that every school needs a student advisory council, elementary, middle, and high, of students that get together on a monthly basis, talking with administration to give input on what's happening in the school. I also think there needs to be a group of staff members meeting monthly with the principal in terms of a principal's advisory council, not for gripe sessions, but to surface concerns with solutions. And then the third council that I've been passionate about is a school planning council. And the school planning council is made up of families, it's made up of staff, it's made up of administration, and the work around the school improvement plan, the data that is driving achievement within our building, is something that the school planning council should spend time advising administration on. And then here are a couple items that are targets as we get into phase 2. One of those pieces is ensuring that we have a strong organizational structure in the central office realm in terms of supporting schools. Do we have the right people in the right place to provide that level of support? I've heard a lot about student screen time, general sense that students spend too much time on their computers and on their devices. We have spent time in the last few months studying that, trying to get behind the scenes and better understanding how much time is on the device or how much time is on a particular website, we'll be reporting out on some of that data that we've collected a little bit later this year and potential recommendations for modifications as we get into the next school year. A graduate action plan is something that I feel like every one of our students needs to have as they graduate from our schools. And that to me means not simply a piece of paper that says I've graduated from WJCC, but it is a plan that says I've applied for colleges if that's something I'm interested in. I've got job applications that have been submitted and somebody's verified. I have a pathway to do something after graduation, and I know what that plan is. I believe the families need to be involved in that. The school needs to be involved in that, and I want there to be sign-offs and potentially at some juncture that to be a graduation requirement. There is an actual action plan for our young people. Elementary planning time is a scenario that our elementary staff have mentioned multiple times to me in conversation. That our elementary teachers, based on the way their day is structured, need to have a stronger gate around the time that they can spend with one another, collaborating about what's in the best interest of the class or the curriculum that they're teaching, or work individually to prepare for students. Professional learning has been a key topic. Sometimes members of our team feel like professional learning is done to them versus including them in the process. And we've had a group that has been talking about what is our vision for professional learning and how do we put that vision into place, incorporating teachers in that conversation, incorporating teachers in the presentation of different learning pieces, as well as how do we involve students in professional learning for our staff. Our students are really strong when it comes to utilization of social media. Probably more strong than you and I are. And so the idea or the opportunity to bring students into the fold to help them tell our story as a school division is something that I believe strongly in and that we'll be working on in phase 2. And then finally, what is it that we're doing internally? No matter what the department is, but what are we doing internally to really ensure that the processes that we have in place best meet the needs of the organization and most specifically, best meet the needs of the students that we're serving. So those are some items that you can anticipate hearing more about in July, and that's the kind of back and forth, give and take as we go through the transition plan that I'm really excited about. So having said that, Digby, what kind of questions are out there?
I will turn it over to the audience to see what questions they have. You've got some meetings coming up in the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what people can expect when they come to one of the redistricting.
Oh, you're talking about redistricting?
Yes.
Right. I've got meetings coming up all the time.
Well, I know, and I got to be precise.
Okay.
I know.
The school division is in the process of redistricting. That redistricting is really driven by the construction projects that are happening at Bright Beginnings North, which is at Norge Elementary, and Bright Beginnings South, which is at Clare Bird Baker. Some years ago, a decision was made between the school board, board of supervisors, and city council that we needed to increase our ability to serve students in pre-kindergarten. In general, we serve 395 students or so across 5 different campuses. So 5 schools house some level of pre-kindergarten based on classroom space. We have a number of schools that have reached capacity in terms of being able to service young people. So Stonehouse, that area continues to grow within our community. Stonehouse is over 100%, probably 108%. So there are portable classrooms out behind Stonehouse. Matthew Whaley is near 100%, and James River is also near 100%. When the pre-K facilities open, those students will go to either the North Campus or South Campus. There will be classroom space within 4 or 5 of our elementary schools that we can recapture, and we need to move some students around in order to get that accomplished. When you start to make modifications at the elementary level in terms of attendance zones and feeder patterns, you then start to look at what needs to happen at middle school and high school to ensure that we have the strongest possible cohort groups working together and that we can be better and stronger in terms of operations and efficiency. So on May 12th and 13th, as you alluded to, we will be inviting the community in to see initial drafts of the redistricting maps at the elementary level, middle school level, and the high school level. So the community will have a chance to weigh in, and then over the course of the summer, we will do some additional reconfiguration from the feedback that is necessary, and then I'll take a recommendation to the school board in October for approval. Once it's approved, it would take effect in the fall of 2027.
How many students are we talking about? It doesn't seem like it'd be a huge number, but
Well, I think that once you start to, if you start to really look at our attendance boundaries, and we've got what we call some island zones, where there is a pocket of a community that is zoned for one school, but everything else around it is zoned for another, the numbers start to go up some. So there will be shifts across all three levels. It would probably not be great for me to tell you what the number is because nothing's definitive yet.
but you have a group, including board members and is it parents that are working?
There are community stakeholders that are part of that planning committee. Been meeting once a week for at least like the last 4 months since January. Redistricting is a challenging process for a community.
Yeah, it's always emotional and emotional.
It is.
Gosh.
It is.
I got a couple of questions. Can you talk a little bit about accreditation within the system?
Okay.
And where we are with regard to all the various levels, elementary, middle, and high? I think I recall reading we were fully accredited, but that may or may not be the case.
There's a difference between accreditation and accountability. And at the state level, accreditation is that you get credit for things, and accountability is that certain things count. So the state has changed the framework to, in some people's opinion, better explain how schools are performing. And I think what you're talking about is our students and their performance on standardized test scores and some of those kinds of things. Is that right? So that's under the school performance and support framework. And so no longer do we say that a school division is necessarily fully accredited, though we are. All of our schools are accredited. We've met the check boxes that the state establishes in terms of number of days in session and number of teachers per student. So there are some very specific numerical pieces that go into the accreditation piece. The accountability piece is a little bit different, and the accountability piece has just changed. It changed last year to this year. So this is our first year of a new accountability model, and 14 of our schools were on track in terms of that accountability model. One was distinguished, I believe. There are 4 levels now: distinguished, on track, off track, and needs assistance. We had 2 elementary schools that dropped a level based on some federal identification. So Matthew Whaley and James River are not on track. One is off track, and the other's needing assistance or needs intensive assistance. One of our challenges, I think, as an organization is to help our community know the difference between, for years and years and years, we said we are fully accredited, and that meant great things. And while you still want to be fully accredited, the goal now in the school support and performance framework is to ensure all of your schools are on track. And so we're working every day to have our schools be on track or distinguished. The shift in things in Richmond related to an incoming governor and an outgoing governor and different wins in terms of the Virginia Department of Education, I think we'll see some modifications in the support framework and how schools are judged, as it were, based on test results. So in general, our schools are performing well, but there is room for us to continue to grow. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And as a follow-up to that, there's some specific cohorts that seem to be having particular challenges as it relates to academic performance and performance on standardized tests.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in looking at your data from your most current annual reports, it looks like economically disadvantaged children are particularly challenged.
Yes, sir.
And I know that there was a great deal of discussion between the city and the county as to how the additional resources could be marshaled to help address the achievement gap for that particular cohort.
Right.
So could you speak to the specifics of the cohort as to where those students are generally coming from as a percentage, city versus county? And can you talk about the resources that are planned or ongoing being directed at that effort?
That's a tough two-parter. Let me start with the first part. The first part is that we have students who are economically disadvantaged in each of our schools, every single one of them. We have students who have been identified as special education students in all of our schools, or English language learners in all of our schools. And so there are multiple categories of students that might need additional assistance. And I think our educators and administrators on a daily basis are looking to identify what's in this student's best interest, what can I do to support this student and that student and this student and you. Relative to the conversation, I think, around Williamsburg and James City County and there was a desire from City Council and members of the Williamsburg community to see additional supports for students that lived in the city, because a study that was done, that the city had done, indicated that city students were not performing at the same level as their peers at the county level. I don't discount that data. I think that data was accurate, that there are learning challenges and gaps that students that reside in the city have relative to their James City County peers. In the last year and a half, we've spent considerable amount of time better understanding who our students are related to locality. We have started to break down and look at data very specifically. How do the James City County students perform? How do the Williamsburg students perform? How do we perform as a school division as a whole? So as an example, we presented to the Board of Supervisors and City Council in October what those data breakdowns were, and an outgrowth of that was the development of an action plan around how do we help our six schools across the school division that house a percentage of students that live in the city of Williamsburg. How do we help them better identify needs of that particular group of students? That process is unfolding, and that process is unfolding because I think that we have not necessarily gone student by student and said, well, that is a W on your chest, so you must be Williamsburg, and that's a J on you, you must be James City County. We looked at our students as a whole in terms of what do you need individually to be better, not necessarily what category you're bringing forward. It is important for us to look at our students most in need and provide additional resources as necessary. And just this Friday, as an example, we've got a group of community partners that are coming together, school leaders, school administrators from the 6 schools that have the highest percentage of Williamsburg students, central support, elected officials, to talk about, here is the data, what are we willing to say needs to happen next, and how can we continue to support our group of students. So it is unfolding. I'm hopeful to come back to the City Council and Board of Supervisors at our October joint meeting and say, here's what we've learned, here's what we're going to do about it. And when I say what we've learned, we are working with a consultant who's helping us better understand the background that students are coming to the table with and some of the challenges in accessing resources, whether that's resources in the school or whether that's resources in the community. And to your point around some of our students that experience homelessness or housing insecurity, that's an area that we need to continue to understand and to figure out. If you don't have resources to support you in the evening when you're not with us, how do we help access some of those additional resources?
So let me follow up with that, because
Sure.
I've heard anecdotally about people seeing kids getting picked up, like what looks like temporary housing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you have any sort of data on how big an issue that is? I mean, is it significant?
It is more significant than you would anticipate in our community. It is more significant. And I would also say that students that experience housing insecurity or food insecurity, their ability to perform day in and day out and sort of reach the highest levels of academic achievement are starkly different than their peers that don't have that same scenario. So that has been a learning opportunity for all of us in terms of how do we kind of look in and best understand circumstances to then help that student and that student's family or support network access resources to on a daily basis. be in school, on time, ready to learn. And by ready to learn, I mean, have you had food? Do you have access to the resources that you need in terms of learning materials? And how do we help support that?
What additional resources do you need to help economically disadvantaged, whether housed or not?
The challenge with that question, Digby, is that every instance is a little bit unique, and our team is, I think, really remarkable in terms of trying to understand each unique circumstance that a family brings to the table, that a housing unit brings to the table, whether that's access to the internet, whether that's access to a ride to and from school outside of the school bus. I mean, we do provide transportation for young people that experience homelessness. We're obligated to through McKinney-Vento, but then how do we accommodate all of the different scenarios in terms of where he or she might be residing at a particular time? So sometimes it's related to transportation, sometimes it's related to internet access, sometimes it's related to washer and dryer to clean clothes, sometimes it's related to clothes itself, food. I mean, so each person has a unique circumstance that we try to address and understand and provide resource support for. It's hard to say it's this one thing.
It almost feels as if the schools are being pushed into a social services function that somebody in the community should be taking care of.
Well, I think our desire is to put students in a position to learn and grow, and we've got to try to make sure some of those other needs are met in order for that to happen. So sometimes while it may feel like a social services component, we want the best for every one of our 11,100 students, and if that means we need to figure out clothes or food or internet or transportation, we're going to do our best to do that.
Do you need internet access to be able to do your schoolwork?
I think it is not a necessity, but it's incredibly helpful. I think that we do utilize some online platforms to capture resources and to catalog resources. So it is better for students to be able to have that access, but we also work with families in terms of hotspots and or devices that can come home or to wherever you're residing.
I'm sorry, I don't know which one of you put your hand up first. So.
I did have a couple questions. One could piggyback off of this topic. I know some schools have received special, like for instance, free lunches and free breakfast for their students. Are we working towards getting those resources for all of our schools, not just the schools that are in need of it? Because as you had mentioned, there are needs at every single school, not just particular ones. So how are those children getting access to that? And then I know some schools have a lot of the parents that get involved to help stock certain things that are hygiene related or things that children might need that they don't necessarily have access to at home, like toothbrushes and deodorant, things like that. Do you have something that could be implemented in all schools to help provide those for all the children?
To your first point around meals and trying to provide meals, we do have, I think 8 of our 16 schools are CEP schools, which do mean that students do not need to pay for meals. That status is really generated by the number of students within a school community that are identified as needing free and reduced meals. I sometimes get challenged the conversation around free lunch and free breakfast because it's not free. It's a subsidy program, and that subsidy has to be picked up from somewhere. I do believe that at the state level, there's conversation around how do we help take meals out of the equation for students that can't afford them. So as an organization, our Child Nutrition Services Fund is a standalone fund, and so our ability to provide meals is driven by revenue that we're able to take in from students who are purchasing meals and or reimbursements that we get from the federal level or the state level in terms of the meals that we serve. So I wouldn't tell you that we are moving towards, as a school division, covering the cost of meals for all students, but we are consistently working with young people who are fit the category or make it into the free and reduced category in terms of providing meals and access to meals. In terms of the care, and I'll call it the care closet concept, I know that our Kiwanis Club, especially in this community, has been very, very excited about and working hard on the care closet mentality. And I was just at the Kiwanis meeting this morning, and I know that there are multiple ones, and I wish I could remember the exact one I was with this morning, but just talking about how can Kiwanis support and ensure that our students have what they need. I feel like in each of our buildings, there is a focus on what do we need here to support the students most in need. And so I would encourage members of the community that are watching, or if there are questions, if there is a school that you are particularly interested in finding out more about, reach out to the building leader and find out what's in place. Yes, sir.
Yes, going in a little different direction.
Okay.
Because you have so many challenges in the area we just spoke of. It's got to be hard to run the school district, and
Best job in the world.
It may be, but it's got to be a real challenge. Having been on a school board before, I know what it's like to have to face some of what you're facing. One of the things that's on my mind has to do with this year. It's the 250th for the country, and citizenship and civics in the school system as to what is currently being taught here in this area. I'm a transplant, so I have no idea about our school system here as far as what the students are getting. Are they taking, for instance, the citizenship test before they graduate from high school so that they have some real grounded basis to make decisions as citizens to vote in our nation? If you look back to our founding fathers, and one of the things they found was most important was an educated citizenry.
Right.
And a democracy and a republic, that's really important. And Thomas Jefferson was all for public education for men and women. And so I'm looking at it and wondering, as a citizen who's recently come here, what is happening now, and if that isn't being addressed, what we can do to help you address that so that we have graduates that become strong citizens for voting purposes.
Sure. There is not a citizenship test per se, and I'm not sure whether you're referring to the test if you were looking to be naturalized.
Right. Yes,
So
that's
that's not a part of the curriculum or assessment. I will say that in grades 5 and 8 and 12, our young people study U.S. government and politics. So there's a civics course in grade 5, a civics course in grade 8 as a part of the curriculum, and then grade 12, in order to graduate from high school, you need to pass Virginia and U.S. government. So there are pieces of democracy education, pieces of citizenship education in those three curricular areas. I would also say more broadly, though, that at the building level, our principals and our schools spend time talking about what does citizenship mean? How do you become a stronger citizen? And what does that look like? From my perspective, it looks like the learning pieces. It looks like serving. How do you serve as a member of a community, as a citizen? And talking about the need for appropriate dialogue with one another and collaboration and communication with one another is an essential component of that. So relative to citizenship tests, no. But in terms of curriculum and instruction pieces, yes, I believe that there are specific lessons around citizenship that happen at the elementary, middle, and high school level.
Just, there are late night talk hosts that sometimes go out in the street and ask the citizens questions as simple as, what's the name of the president? Do you know who your senator is? Those types of questions, and the answers are always humorous. That's why they do it.
Right.
And it just seems like we have a populace that either isn't learning it or is forgetting it fairly quickly.
Well, even Digby has done Are You Smarter Than a Fourth Grader?
Fourth grader, yeah.
Right. So Digby put that into some work in the Watch back in the summertime.
Yep.
Was that right?
Yep.
I don't disagree with you that I think that we as a community, whether it be our students or whether it be the adults, need to have a stronger understanding of that which is going on around us, and how do we advocate for our belief and do that in a productive, constructive way. So that's an adult thing that I think we need to work on, but then also how do we allow that to occur within our school buildings at the elementary, middle, and high school level so that our young people understand and appreciate the need to be informed, not just to have an opinion, but be informed with your opinion and be able to talk about it even if you're not going to agree with the other person you're having dialogue with. So I agree with you. I think that there is a litany of things that are expected of our educators relative to objectives or standards of learning at the state level. And I do feel like there is an emphasis on citizenship and understandings around democracy. Whether or not you see somebody on Richmond Road and ask them if they know who their representative is, that's a little less. That's concerning, I guess.
I got another one.
Is this another data question, Mr. Henderson?
It is.
Okay,
You know
great.
he's the data freak.
All right, so I looked at your enrollment breakdown, and I was shocked, really, by some of the profile that current enrollment is 11,146. I think that's what you had quoted, but that's what the most
It
recent.
depends on the day of the week. I mean, it
Right,
really does depend on the day of the
varies,
week, right?
Exactly. But of that, there were 3,637 economically disadvantaged students.
Mhm.
And so I'd like to understand what's the definition of economically disadvantaged?
Mhm.
So that, if we're making categories, how do you fall into that bucket or not? And then you've also got a category that are English learners. And there's 1,027 of those.
Right.
And then we have 1,884 in special ed.
Mhm.
Now, I have a little bit of experience with the special ed folks, having had some relatives who've been through the program, and each student there gets an education plan. Are there individual plans for those that are in the English learners and also in the economically disadvantaged?
There is a specific plan for students with limited English proficiency. There is a LEAP plan for students that fall into that category, having joined us with English not as their first language.
Right.
There is not necessarily a specific plan for young people who are identified as economically disadvantaged. It's a state and federal designation based on your income level or poverty level, as the case may be.
All
Is,
right,
is
so-
that income level based on local income or state?
That's a good question, Digby. It's the income of your family or family unit across, but I believe it's a federal designation.
All right, and you've also got a cohort that's gifted,
Yes, sir.
which is the 1750. Now, do they also get an individualized education plan, or how are our gifted students
Serviced.
serviced?
Sure. I don't believe there's a specific gifted education plan for each individual student. I do believe that there are, depending upon the level, elementary, middle, or high, different programmatic pieces that happen. At the elementary level, the program looks a little bit different because at the elementary level, generally I'm in one classroom for the entire day with a teacher.
Right.
So our gifted resource teachers I think they're now called talent development teachers because we're developing students' talents. Those teachers push into classrooms to work with teachers to support enrichment for the young people that have demonstrated giftedness. That model begins to change as you get into middle and high school based on size and scope.
Well, at one time, the system had an IB program. Is that program still active,
That
or
program is not still active.
it is not?
It is not. There's not currently an international baccalaureate program.
Okay, interesting. All right. The phone policy,
Are we talking about cell phones?
yes.
Okay.
Can you stipulate what that policy is
Sure.
for us? Because I mean, I've heard that there's a no phone policy, but it may be different in reality. What is it?
There's a no phone policy during the school day. From the time you walk in until the time you walk out, your phone can't be out or on.
How long has that been in place? Is it a year now?
We're in our second year. So there was an executive order from Governor Youngkin, and that executive order came out, I believe, in the waning weeks of the summer of 2024. And we made a decision as an organization to say, okay, we know it's an executive order, it's not legislative yet, but we're going to go with it. And so we started the school year off, the 24-25 school year, saying everything had to be off and away. You couldn't see it, you couldn't have it out, and it couldn't be on. We had a Find Your Focus campaign where we wanted students to power off as they came in the building, and there were genuinely at the beginning of that particular school year there were growing pains. Those growing pains in some buildings was more problematic than in other buildings. I feel like we were ahead of other school divisions in terms of that decision, and we grew into it. And so then when there was legislation that said this is a requirement, we were in a better place than other school systems.
So,
I will tell you
Yeah.
that as I talk with young people, some of them are huge fans of the fact that they're not able to use their phone, while others miss their phone. And so I think that part of our learning as a culture is, if it's going to be powered off, in a way, can I survive without it? And you build a level of resilience. So that is the policy, and that is something that we follow.
How has that impacted academic performance and behavior?
That's a fair question. I'm not sure. A couple things. So anecdotal evidence for me is when I visit schools and spend time in the cafeteria, students are talking to each other, and that's an upgrade over students at the table on their phones. I think that there are some additional opportunities for people to have conversations in class because I'm not as worried about my phone. I'm not sure I can point specifically to academic achievement data that would say this law enactment has had a net positive on academic achievement. What I will say is that I think it has created stronger opportunities for students to talk with one another and to be potentially engaged in their learning. The other part of that engagement in their learning also comes from how is the lesson in the classroom designed on a particular day, and how do I as a student find meaning or value in that particular lesson.
Has conflict been reduced as a result?
To some degree. I think that young people, by virtue of sometimes being young people, are going to experience conflict with one another. And going back to our conversation around citizenship, how do we express our conflict with each other? And that conflict, are we going to yell at each other? Are we going to hit each other? Or are we going to be able to talk about why we are in conflict? Our goal is for you to talk about it and not yell at each other or hit each other. But from time to time, there are fights that occur.
how's the parents reacted?
To the cell phones?
Are they in favor of it?
I think some were very much in favor of it. I think some, because of the frequency with which we communicate with our children, felt like something was being taken away from us as well. And that's a challenge, right? Because if, as a parent, many of us have become accustomed to reaching out to our young person at any point to find out whatever we need to find out, share information, make sure they're okay, and when that phone is off and away, that becomes far more complicated.
Well, I guess I trust the schools to make sure that they're okay. In my own family, we had some divisions about that because when my daughter was a senior in Jamestown, I'd see her texting, and I go, "Aren't you supposed to be in class?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing texting?"
Right.
So I would imagine that it does allow them to focus a bit better.
That's our hope.
Another question, the population enrollment has been going down. Do you have any information or numbers on whether the private schools or homeschooling is going up in the area, or are we just losing students?
A little bit of both. We look at our enrollment every year. We do enrollment projections usually in October of every year. Those enrollment projections, as we think about and look at, there's some increase in homeschool numbers. In the most recent iteration, students just left the area. But that's not unusual. I think in the Commonwealth of Virginia, most school divisions have seen a decline in enrollment. Some of the challenges that I think Virginia experienced during the fall and over the course of the year was some of the turbulence that was happening in the DC area and some of the downsizing that was occurring in terms of federal government employment in those kinds of scenarios, which had an impact. Maybe not a huge impact on Williamsburg, James City County, but had an impact in other parts of the state. So we've seen a little bit of an increase in homeschool, but more often than not, it's folks leaving this particular area and re-enrolling in another public school somewhere else. So when you withdraw from WJCC and you enroll somewhere else, we get an enrollment request, so we know and can help track that.
I have very young children. One is in first grade.
Okay.
And one is going into kindergarten next year. So
Or did you join us on Friday night for Kindergarten Family Fest?
yes, we did.
Did you enjoy it?
I did.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
My kids enjoyed it, which was more important.
That's the key.
There were fire trucks, so like it was the least. At least there was.
Yes, and you could actually use the hose.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That was fun.
Okay.
So with that in mind, and my wife and I are big fans. That's why we live here. We attend Laurel Lane. That's our school district. So
Okay.
right now, and I don't want to go micro. This is administratively for the whole district.
Right.
Aligning your plate. However, for us, there is a big change happening over the summertime,
Sure.
which is essentially an entire change of leadership at that school.
Right.
Personally, why I'm even a little bit more affected, our son's 504 plan is administered by the current principal, Dr. Swan.
Right.
So there's a lot that is uncertain for us right now.
Mhm.
Because I just kind of want to, and I know that they're not the only ones. I understand that multiple schools have multiple needs. Dr. Swan's very highly regarded in the school district.
Yes.
We're upset she's leaving for a good reason. With that said, before I ask that question, transportation has for us been very difficult in both a consistency and then also just kind of holistically society. It's difficult all over the country. This tiered system now, our young ones are going to school very late and they're getting home very late.
Mm-hmm.
When then there's an interruption in a bus route, which we've had a bunch as of late, it's making it difficult to get to extracurriculars. And it's just kind of more than I would have ever expected. It's not consistent. It's crazy how much a schedule changing for adults and for kids kind of throws off the whole family unit.
Yes, sir.
Question is really like, what's the administration's current perspective of like where is the bus fleet utilization and where is it going in the next couple of years?
Right.
That's going to maybe come away from the tiered, or what are the long-term goals?
We're not as good as we need to be.
Okay.
We're not as good as we need to be. In the last year and a half or two, we've increased our driver number, which has been somewhat helpful. And by that I mean, probably about 16 or 18 months ago, we were hovering in the 79 or 80 driver range, which is not enough to run our system the way our system is set up. We actually just today in a senior leadership meeting talked about the number of drivers that we are employing, and that number is just under 100. So there's been growth in terms of our driver numbers. We are challenged because of the 4-tier system. The 4-tier system is in place because of the square footage that we try to cover on a daily basis and the number of students that we're trying to transport. I think in your particular case, or in the case of the group in the 4th tier, any early impact creates a significant and exponential impact in tiers 2, 3, and 4. So if there's a challenge in tier 1, either in the morning or the afternoon, you're going to feel that challenge as it ripples through. So the middle school is going to feel it, and then whether it's Stonehouse or James River are going to feel it in tier 3, and then the 7 elementaries on the back end of that tier system. So I understand where you're coming from. Thinking forward, one of the pieces that we hope to be able to solidify in a stronger fashion are some organizational efficiencies as we redistrict. We have some of our runs are significantly long. I'm hoping that becomes more compact as we create tighter, stronger, cohesive attendance boundaries. In that same vein, I think as an organization, we are really carefully examining, do we need to have elementary schools split on the 2-7 tier split? So do we need to, in terms of how things go from high to middle to elementary, could we put more in the 3rd place, which would break up that 2 and 7? So we're looking at that carefully. That gets a little bit wonky. This group is wondering what I'm talking about, but I think as a Laurel Lane parent, you know that the idea that we have 2 elementary schools in Tier 3 and then 7 elementary schools in Tier 4, that is designed based on the fact that your high school runs are longer, your middle school runs are a little less long, and then your elementary school runs get even shorter because the attendance zones are smaller generally. But we're struggling, and I wish I could say it's going to be fixed. We are monitoring on-time arrival. We're monitoring after-school arrival. What time are they picked up? What time do they get home? When's the last bus drop-off? Part of it's continuing to increase the number of drivers that we have, because I feel like we have the right fleet support, meaning we have enough buses.
Okay.
It's continuing to hire folks with commercial driver's license and bringing them into the fold so that we can create shorter runs or more runs, as the case may be.
Okay.
The last thing that I'll say is within that, over the course of the last 3 years, we have really prioritized increasing bus driver compensation. And in fact, our bus drivers are on their own pay scale. We have a unified scale, 1 through 20, but then there's a bus scale, and that bus scale has been adjusted as we try to continue to compete with Newport News and York and Hampton. Yeah. So
Okay.
that hopefully that answers that question.
It does.
Did you want to talk about the principal transfer?
I do.
Okay.
I have a question
I
on
do,
that.
we
part.
do have about 3 minutes left before
Okay.
they close the doors and kick us out, so.
Okay. To piggyback on that, as you mentioned, the 2 elementary schools that were struggling the most.
Mhm.
Maybe I don't know if this was intentional, but was it intentional that you took 2 people from the same school to then go and help access those schools? Was that intentional?
I have to be really careful when I talk about personnel decisions. You specifically mentioned a principal, and I think we have strong principals across the organization. As I looked at our decision making when it came to principal transfers, there were 2 factors at play for me, and I'll try to briefly explain those 2 factors. At the elementary level, we know we're going through a fairly significant redistricting, and that lots of schools will feel impacts. That redistricting is going to come online in the fall of 27. It was our goal to not make any principal shifts the same summer as we're shifting students. So we wanted to get ahead of that by a year and have principals in place that could then be part of the welcoming process for new students that are going to matriculate into a school. So when we started talking about how to best ensure we had the strongest possible leadership teams in each of our buildings, it was making that move now versus making that move next summer. So there are a couple of factors at play there. And the last piece is what I said just a second ago. It's my goal that we have the strongest possible leadership teams in every single one of our buildings, and I'm committed to moving people in order to activate that. And so in the case of the school that you mentioned, both of those people are strong leaders within our organization and will do well in the 2 schools they'll be serving, and you're going to have 2 strong leaders that come in and support Laurel Lane.
Dr. Heber, thank you so
You're
much
welcome,
for being
Davey.
with
I
us
really
tonight.
appreciate
Let's
the
give him a
invitation.
hand.